Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Mary had a little lamb.
They used to call me One Take Danny, you know, when I worked in television. Connection and did you know your world's run by assholes, Peg?
It just dawned on me that when I see this clip, I'll be like, oh, I should have checked.
Sure, please do. I never met any of these speakers. So it's all new people, and their disciplines are so different than mine. So it's been really fun talking to them. And I love listening to their stories. And what's nice, they actually talk. So in my life, I don't ever get to sit and just listen. I like listening, but I don't ever get to do that. I have to do all the talking. They do all the talking, and it is fabulous. I was sitting there and they go, you sure you want me to get? Yeah, I want to hear everything. I was talking to Alex. I said, tell me the Alex story from the very beginning and leave no details out. And he did.
You know, I've been doing this such a long time, and it was really, really hard in the beginning, in the 90s. And there were several of us, David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, myself, Wendell Stevens, Clifford Stone, Bob Dean, and we were all shouting into the wind, you know, and the only feedback we got was, you're nuts, you're a crackpot, you're this, you're that, you know, and individually we knew that we were definitely onto something because we could see it. You know, conspiracy theorist is really just a pattern recognition specialist. We saw stuff. We saw it in a very different way than what the narrative was, and we knew we were right. Now, you would think they would just say, oh, you're a kook, and just leave it alone. But the more we talked about it, the more threatened they got, and they would come after us, you know, over and over and over again. And there was a period where I stopped talking for 6 years. I was living in Boulder, and we had just had our first child. And I came out of my mailbox, etc., which doesn't exist anymore, but, you know, they were in mostly shopping malls and shopping centers. And I came out, and 3 men approached me. And they had a manila envelope, and they said, are you Alex Collier? I said, yes, I am. And he pulled out a manila envelope, and he starts telling me my life story. And I stopped him, and I said, I already know my life story. What I don't know is who the fuck you are. And he said, it doesn't matter. I go, oh, it does matter. He goes, look. And he hands me this piece of paper. He goes, do you know all these names on this paper? And this was all of my friends, associates, and some of my family members. He goes, if you do not shut the fuck up, bad things are going to happen to them. So, and I had just had a baby, right? My wife at the time is still, you know, processing the birth, and still hormonal. Things haven't quite balanced yet. So I reached out to a friend of mine who was on the list, and I told him, and he goes, well, I wouldn't say anything, but what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to stop talking. You know, I don't see that I have a choice. And Mike, 6 years, almost to the day, I have a contact with Mornay, and I would have telepathic during that time, but he kept his distance, because of course they know, you know, they know all this stuff, because they're from the future. So he kept his distance, and almost to the day, we had another contact, and he said, it's okay for you to go back out and speak. And I said, well, what about these guys? He goes, they're dead. You have nothing left to fear. I didn't even ask how. I didn't ask why, who, didn't matter. But what I did find out, though, from him later was that they were part of a program that was designed to shut down any kind of conversation, anything that would challenge the narrative that was being put out by the Department of Defense. You know, all this energy that they put into terrorizing people, scaring people, hiding the truth, instead of just telling everybody what's going on. Because, you know, they spent all this time, they created all this trauma, all this money, and we're right where we should have been decades ago. It's going to come out.
I always love it when I talk to conferences. Not all of them do it, but boy, this one does. I'll tell them I'm shaping sound waves. I'm using sound waves to shape metal. Well, of course, we know about that. So normally I have to go through all the physics and explain things to them, but I did a little different yesterday. I said, I know y'all know about shaping things with sound waves, but let's get to the really, nuts and bolts of it. So go grab yourself 2 standing vibrato waves and try to get them to interlock where they do get a 90-degree corner. And when you do that, let me know how it worked out for you, because it took me almost 1 million calculations to get to that point. But I finally got it. I was able to do that and a whole lot more. But this crowd here just knows what I'm talking about, whereas the rest of the people, they sit out there and it just goes right over their head. They don't even realize what I just told them.
Why I chose the subject of my conference? Because in a few weeks ago, I had a big emotional shock in my life. I lost a friend and another problem, and it triggered me some new memories about when I was young and when I live, about some bad thing in my abduction. So I will disclose this in this event for the first time of my life. It was not easy because it's a personal things, and I felt it was the right moment because the people are ready to understand better than before.
Right. I mean, I was a little nervous about speaking about ancient history because why does ancient history matter when you're really out in the galaxy? But I think it does because we on this plane, we still have to deal with what's happening on Earth. And I think we're in the middle of a big war. And it's been going on against humanity for thousands of years. We just didn't understand it. But now it's coming to an end. And I think by looking at our ancient history, we can identify from the symbols around us and from what we know about the entities we're dealing with. I think we can identify the enemy, and I think we can better prosecute this war on our plane.
I always felt like what happened to me is hard to speak about. So what happened to me is hard to speak about. It's hard to especially break the news to somebody that doesn't have a background in the field of the secret space program or ufology in general. People that are, it's very hard. And I'm one person that has been able to flesh out details or evidence behind what happened to me. And it was all the way back in 1982. And in my search recently in 2023, before last year's GSIC, I went to one of the places and I just uncovered a treasure trove of data and supporting evidence behind what happened to me. The program that I was originally abducted and put into, it was a remote viewing research program, and I found a lot of paperwork supporting the time frame and the methods and the techniques that were used, the things that I remember. I went on record in 2015 and 16, and as I researched them, they're still advanced methods, and where I'm kind of following in those footsteps. So a lot of it fell in my lap, but that evidence is evidence, right? And so that's the burden of us all, is evidence at this point. Pretty soon it'll be a moot point at the rate we're going. Disclosure has happened. It's just about getting people to pay attention. And so you have to present evidence to people. And in my search for that, I uncovered remote viewing and advanced remote viewing and remote viewing countermeasures. And so and there's already an established remote viewing world, alive and well without me. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm teaching it to people. It's what I've become a professional at it. And I'm trying to teach it to people and demonstrate what it is, because it's really an innate ability we all have. We all, just as we all can touch and heal and feel hot and cold and see and hear, we have intuition that gives us a sight beyond what we are used to. We use it all the time. Anyhow, so that's what I presented on, and the fact that the remote viewing is so successful for me, for the groups that I've started, is why I presented it. And I'll probably continue to present because this year we're working on more advanced things into the psychoenergetics spectrum, and I'll probably have data for that next year as well.
The reason I chose deep underground military bases as my topic of investigation this year was that I was hearing on the one hand many researchers talking about these rescues that were happening where the children and enslaved adults who were being abused by the deep state in these bases and had been held captive and been subjected to genetic experiments, that they were being rescued by an alliance of extraterrestrials, positive extraterrestrials, and human special forces groups. And the more I dived into that literature, it seemed to me to be something that really needed a lot more attention, and people needed to be aware that there is this kind of battle to free these DUMBs that are located strategically at key energy centers around the planet, which results in an actual dumbing down of the planetary consciousness and of humanity's collective consciousness. At the same time, there were other DUMBs, other underground facilities that were controlled by the Earth Alliance, by positive extraterrestrials and inner Earth civilizations, and they were actually doing the opposite. They were trying to awaken humanity. They were doing things like communicating with humans and also doing flyovers of different areas to, again, raise consciousness and awareness of UFOs and where they come from. So I thought it would be good to present both sides of that and also introduce JP, who's been to a number of these DUMBs that are controlled by the Earth Alliance, and he's seen the flying saucer craft and the collaboration between the Nordic groups that he's aware of and this Earth Alliance, and they go out and actually help raise humanity's awareness. And he was seeing all of this, and also the training of pilots, international pilots. So all of that was what I really wanted to focus on in my presentation this year.
This time I choose to speak about consciousness because humanity is awakening to who they are, and they need to understand their connection to the universe. What is the creator source, and how are we a fractal of it? How humans are powerful, are co-creators of this reality. And the times are changing, and we need to work consciously at changing this reality.
Very excellent question. How our evolution will affect the birth and death cycle. So I think that the consciousness, so Elena touched on consciousness with science, and if you really scrutinize where our science is today, medical science and psychological science and science in general, there's no consideration to consciousness being one of the main factors of existence, even though we have things like the double slit experiment that show that our consciousness clearly affects our environment. I believe the birth and death cycle is necessary, and that for it to be an organic way. People want to ascend and do all these things, but what's the hurry? You know, if you take a kid in junior high and put him in 12th grade in high school, he will not enjoy the experience. He'll be too young. Even if he's smart enough to do the work, there's an organic way to grow. And your consciousness, so we can call it soul, you can call it whatever, there's many different names, but what makes you aware that you're aware? That part of you grows as you live your life. And we can't live it all in one life. So we have to experience many different things. Consciousness must evolve. And the perspective from the other side, and I only can speculate, is probably that you need to be alive to grow, or that being alive causes great growth, which makes it very valuable. So my opinion is the birth and death cycle will never end, because there's got to be a way out. Also, living forever on this side doesn't appeal to me. So why would you want to be stuck? I mean, you could live forever and be stuck in a body or a mindset that's not desirable. So better to have many different experiences than be tied to one. So in Star Maker, the existence that I remember, so consciousness taken into the 20 and back, and then consciousness being taken into a shorter, more watered down existence, I felt like the same me. So the same sense of humor, even though I wasn't very humorous then, the same sense of humor, the same kind of logical reaction to things. Like it was me, albeit lesser. Like if you know what you're like when you get up in the morning and you're groggy from being tired and you haven't had coffee, that's you, but not as good as the you at 3 o'clock after you've got your act together. So in these experiences, it was as if I was groggier and less alert, if you will. So mentally less. And eventually, when it all closed, became what I feel like I was in the first place.
Well, when it comes to dams and disclosure of the horrific events occurring there, I mean, people can take various positions on that. I mean, in one way, it's information that's very disturbing and very challenging, especially for people who've been kept in the dark about these kinds of topics and are not aware of UFOs and extraterrestrial visitors at all. So this can be quite shocking to them. On the other hand, this can be the sort of information that can catalyze people, that can kind of like spark them into action, because when you're talking about imprisoned children being tortured, abused, adrenochrome and all of these substances being extracted out of them for some kind of intergalactic trade. I mean, these are horrific things, and that can energize people. I mean, when I've heard some of the stories from people like Melody Charest describing what was happening to these children, I mean, that had a galvanizing effect on me. So I think it's information that needs to be put out there. I don't think it's something that should be pushed. It should be just made available for people, because some are going to be repelled, and maybe they're going to be drawn to the more light and fluffy side of the ET, and that's fine, because it's good to be kind of like educated and awakened. But at some point in everyone's journey, you're going to have to deal with the fact that there were some very dark things happening here, and we're going to have to clear that. What was happening in those dams, and clear the planetary consciousness of the trauma and the dark energies accumulated in these dark spots. And that'll take decades. It's not something that's going to happen with full disclosure, because we're talking about energy vortices in key parts of the planet that have had these dams where dark things have been happening. So it's like a haunted castle. You just can't go in there and just all of a sudden all the ghosts are gone and exorcised. You have to actually spend time in bringing in the light to transform that place.
The timeline of the future is still stable. In 20 years' time, so I don't know if it will start to happen tomorrow or in 10 years' time, I do not have this information, but in about 20 years' time, the Earth will be different. The Earth will be restored to clean air, clean water, nature growing again, because we will function on free energy, renewable energies, the energy from the void and anti-gravity materials. The world will be different and easier to live in.
If I had a message for everyone that I could use this medium to convey, I would want to tell folks to believe in themselves. I've heard so many stories about people saying, well, my family thinks I'm crazy, my friends think I'm crazy. I've been through all that, and I know what that's like. I would just say, you know what, folks? If you know this to be true, if you really in your heart know it to be true, then live as though it is true within you. If they don't believe it, well, so what? It's not going to change what you know. It just means they haven't gotten to that point yet where they know something. They haven't got to the point where they're ready to believe anything. You're well past them. Just believe in yourself and live your truth. If you don't do that, then what are you doing and who are you doing it for?
Good? Well, that's it.
I would love to talk more about
Wow, these are great questions too.
And now for my next act, I'm going to sing a song. I was thinking about this. The band didn't show up. It'll have to be a cappella. Unless you want to make humming noises. You don't? Well, then forget it.